Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Cabinet on Tuesday, 8th of October in the Council Chamber. We've got our new IT, so hopefully it'll be working like clockwork. Item 1, membership of the committee. We've got apologies from Councillor Graham Turner. I think that's it. I think that's all the apologies we've got. Item 2, minutes of previous meeting. Are there correct record? Thank you. Any interest? If anybody's got any interest, please complete the form and give them to Andrea at the end of the meeting. Admission of the public. Have you got any public?
There's no private item.
And we've got no public attending either. Thank you very much. No public attending. Item 5, deputations and petitions. We've got no publics and we've got no deputations and petitions. Public question time. There is no public question time. Member question time. John, you got a question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, very straightforward question. When will confiscated green bins be returned and will it be free? Thank you.
Councillor Rob Walker, do you want to answer that?
Right. The green bins are being returned over the next few months. A letter is going out to residents explaining what's happening. And we're also trying to make sure that they are engaged in a conversation with our waste advisors. What we don't want really is green bins to go back and to find that we've got problems again. I think in the first instance we realised that there should have been more communication with residents and more work on the clarity of the information about what should go into the green bins. So they will be going back and it will be a gradual process.
Second part of the question, Chair.
Yes, you got supplementary?
Sorry, the second part of the question was, is it free?
The second part of the question?
Yes.
Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Seeing as we rarely get a chance to get round to questioning the executive at full council, take advantage of this. Could you give us your opinions and overview on what the benefits of enterprise zones are in the immediate terms for Kirklees, please?
I will put my learned scholar friend, Peter McBride, for enterprise zones, Peter.
The idea throughout West Yorkshire is to encourage investment in areas where there's limited taxation, differential taxation regimes, which encourages specific investment into given areas of choice by the West Yorkshire Authority.
Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, supplementary, yeah. Concerned because that didn't answer the question about what the immediate benefits to Kirklees were. We have 2 enterprise zones in Kirklees, Lindley Moor and Murfield 25. Lindley Moor seems to be acting now as a receptor for a lot of car dealerships. The big Land Rover dealership, which is on the approach to Huddersfield from Cooper Bridge, has moved to Lindley Moor. Another dealership from Huddersfield Town Centre has moved to Lindley Moor, leaving those premises empty. I'm told that enterprise zones attract a rate-free period. So businesses moving on to enterprise zones have probably up to 5 years of rate-free period, while in the same time we're seeing that those premises which previously would have been paying rates are now empty. So it seems like a double whammy. Councillor McBride talked about encouraging investment. We were told through the planning process that there were many blue chip businesses waiting to go onto Murfield 25. In which case, why do you need to give someone a golden handshake to come onto a business into a premises that people are crying out for?
These enterprise zones are across West Yorkshire. If we don't have one, or the incentives are to go elsewhere. The idea and concept of enterprise zone is really a very Tory idea. It's to presume that investment comes about as a result of minimum regulation and minimum taxation. I think an abortive, stupid policy. But because we are part of a system like that, we are, subject to a regime that if we're not part of it, we will be disbenefited. Therefore, pro tem, we go along with it.
Martin,
Thank you.
I hope we're not talking about enterprise zones all evening. I don't have a problem with you asking questions right here, but we have got a full agenda.
Well, as I said, because we now don't get the opportunity to hold the executive to account at full council, we were constantly told the place to do that is cabinet. Just one more question on...
You're absolutely right, Martin, but from my point of view, right, yeah, there is still a whole window where you can contact me or any cabinet member, like you do, you know, and I'll put my hands up. So there's always opportunity other than the forums you mentioned, but anyway.
Thank you, Chair. And as you know, I do contact you frequently on issues, and I sometimes get some very terse replies back. So we are part of the system. Could we have a statement on what the economic short-term impact to the council is over the 3 to 5 year budget period for enterprise zones? I appreciate that Councillor McBride can't answer that at the moment. Another question then, for you, Chair. Could you tell me then, we've seen a lot of concern nationally about decision-making processes and implementation. Do you think it's important to abide by and act on the decisions that a body such as a council makes?
I'll answer the last one. I'll answer the last one. Yeah. Martin, if you're talking about national stuff, national politics, that's what you said nationally, right? Yeah, we've seen. Yeah. Well, if I start reflecting on national politics, I think all parties and everybody will agree, right? Yeah, that this council and other councils are an exemplar of how we actually engage with our citizens and our residents. I don't want to start commenting too much in terms of what the national picture is, because I think all parties need to actually reflect back and just understand, right? Yeah, how it's impacting what they're doing.
So again, the question was: do you think it's important to abide by and act on the decisions taken? And for Kirklees.
Yes, I do.
In which case, could you tell me why the decision that Council took in January for a climate emergency, which stipulated that all future reports would have environmental impact assessments, has not been adhered to? We're told, talking to some officers, we haven't been told to do that yet. And could you also tell me that, seen as that motion in January said that the climate emergency would report back within 6 months, why we are now 9 months after that motion and we haven't had that report back to council?
Martin, you're absolutely right. There was a cross-party working group that was formed, and your group, the Conservative group, right, yeah, did not send any members on there. So we were starved of a deficit in representing the full council and the full views of our constituents. Things have moved on a lot. You've probably seen, right, yeah, that I've actually fully committed myself, and this process is actually getting on. At the LGA, we actually passed a cross-party motion to actually make this an emergency. At the Combined Authority, we've actually done the same thing. And there is a report that's imminent that will come to full council. 6 months was always a very ambitious and very sort of like tight timescale, but we need to make sure that the councillors that are part of that process, which unfortunately your group isn't represented, but if you want to put your name forward, I will more than happily put your name forward. Yeah, and that group will be meeting and reporting very, very shortly. And I'm not going to give too much away, but we are fully committed, and my party is fully committed nationally to actually take this issue very, very seriously. And I think one thing that we would ask you to do, and I would join you in this, is to make sure that the government of the day, which is your government, actually also gets fully behind this, because we need actually full commitment with resources to actually make it happen. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I think you'll find that it was the Conservative government who brought in the net zero edict and not anybody else. But what I'm talking about is why then this council has not been having environmental impact assessments on reports. These are critical to many of the things that we're talking about. The attendance at meetings...
Martin, what it is, right, is we've got a big agenda, but the 2050 target is actually completely not on. That's why we've actually made sure that target has been brought forward to 2038, and the Labour Party has actually moved that target even more nearer, and they will invest in renewables, in green energy. We've got a full agenda on. I'm happy to converse with you outside this meeting, but we have got a full agenda on.
Sorry, Chair, this is the public meeting, and As far
Mark,
as I
it's a
know,
public
it
meeting,
isn't
right?
a
Yeah, but it's
time-limited
not for
slot.
you to
Members
actually
should be
play
given the opportunity.
politics.
If you wish to curtail that
Yeah.
scrutiny of the executive, that's entirely your prerogative.
I think if Councillor Bolt read item 9, he would see that we are applying exactly what he proposes. Please read it.
Anyway, we are now moving on to item 8, the corporate performance report.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Munro, I didn't see you.
I'm one of the members, am I not? Anyway, I'd like to speak on agenda item 10, the revised playable spaces strategy. My question is, removing the list of play areas and maps does not...
Councillor Munro, I've got you down, and I will bring you on when
we deal with
so
that.
I've got you down, and Councillor Lawson on item 11, and Councillor Lawson on item 12 as well. So the questions that you have, we'll take them on them items, so my apology if I didn't make that clear. Anyway, we'll move on to the corporate performance report, quarter 1. A few highlights, members, before we open up the debate and agree on the report. Firstly, Ofsted inspection that took place. We are now significantly improved, and we are now special measures. Another highlight in the report is we put £1.5 million in supporting children and young people with special education needs. That's a key highlight. And we are the best in the region for outcomes for our carers in relation to quality of life and social contact. Huddersfield Blueprint Master Plan, a dedicated investment that will be going in, £250 million. Kirklees, museums and galleries, we've been successful in a bid from the National Heritage Fund of 216,000. So there are some of the key highlights. If other members want to make any comments, Councillor Khan.
I'd just like to highlight a few things relating to the health and adult social care portfolio. I welcome the increasing number of young people receiving support from CAMS. This has significantly addressed the waiting times, and also there's an increasing number of young people accessing the online counselling, so that's proven to be quite effective and successful. I welcome the launch of the app 50 Things to Do Before You're 5, and I think it's a fantastic resource for parents to access a list of low cost or no cost activities that support learning and development in preschool children. Community Plus are thriving, and they're continuing to perform really well, with 94% of adults reporting improvement in their sense of well-being as a result of participation with the service. As a ward councillor, I've personally found them extremely useful in connecting people to local activities and reducing isolation and loneliness. And we know that isolation and loneliness leads to health problems. So this is quite key in terms of tackling health inequalities in Kirklees. I'm also pleased to see there's an increase in the number of people receiving short-term exercise classes to help them increase their mobility and increase their independence. I'd like to thank volunteers across Kirklees engaged in the chair-based activities for their hard work and efforts. We've had a 5% increase in the number of people accessing self-directed support, which is good. However, there is roughly a 5% drop in the number of people receiving adult social care who found the information and advice easily accessible. We are addressing this issue and will ensure written information is available at all GP surgeries. We're also investigating the slight drop in satisfaction for people who receive long-term care and support. This may be really related to issues and problems with the long-term sustainability of private providers. Over the last year, we've unfortunately had 3 private providers cease operations, often with little notice. The council has stepped in each time to ensure the continuity of care for residents, and sometimes the public, I don't think they always differentiate between the council and private providers. So we're undertaking further investigations of what may have contributed towards that slight drop in satisfaction, and we're continuing to work very closely with private providers to support their long-term sustainability. However, unless we have the government publishes a green paper, this market is going to continue to be quite unstable. We're doing some quite innovative work with the Kirklees Independent Living team, and we're hoping to reduce hospital delays in hospital discharges, and we'll be introducing and we're using new technologies, piloting, which support collaboration between the different partners and more seamless working. The stats on page 13 are quite interesting. A recently published national survey data shows an increase in the proportion of Kirklees respondents rating their happiness levels as higher or very high. However, a separate national survey shows the proportion of adults in Kirklees achieving recommended levels of physical activity is declining and levels of inactivity are rising. This is in contradiction to national trends where the physically active adults score significantly higher on the scores of happiness. So make what you want of that, really.
Thank you, Councillor Cam. Councillor Patterson?
I just wanted to highlight just a couple of things from my portfolio, learning, aspiration and communities. It's not actually in the highlight report, but it is actually in the main body of the report under Aspire and Achieve. Our schools over the last year, or attainment at our schools over the last year, has been above the regional average. And I just want to, which is, I'm pleased about, and congratulate the schools on that. But I just want to actually also link that to something which is in the report, which is that Kirklees has one of the lowest rates of 16 and 17-year-olds not in education, employment or training. I think the aspiration that we are giving our kids in schools, or our pupils or students in schools, is obviously paying off, that they're going into further training, apprenticeships, jobs and further education. Just one other thing, really more by way of information than anything else. Again, it's in the highlight report, but that the work that the community service has been doing in terms of modern day slavery has been identified as an example of best practice by the Local Government Association, and we will be putting on a briefing of that, certainly for all war members. And finally, because Councillor Graham Turner isn't here, I'm sure he would want to say this if he was. Again, congratulations, I think, to staff. The fact that sickness absence has reduced by 1.5 days per employee over the past year is a sign of a healthy organisation, that we're getting our staff are happier and having less days sick, and therefore obviously able to contribute to the work of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carol Patterson. Councillor Viv Kendrick?
Thank you, Chair. I think children and adolescents' mental health is a sort of national concern, and it is no different in Kirklees. For me to see the increased numbers of young people who are able to access the CAM service is something that it is to be pleased about. That is a continuing issue that needs to continue to have a push behind it to improve that. And I'll just touch on the fact that another issue is around about autism diagnosis. We've got reduced waiting times for diagnosis to an average of 26 weeks, which sounds an awful long time, 6 months. I think 2 years ago, it was 2 years waiting time, which is the norm across most authorities. Last year, it was down to a year, and other authorities were saying, how are you doing that? That's fantastic. And it is because we've invested in that. To have got it down to 26 weeks with a goal to keep reducing that, I think has to be credited. And the post-diagnosis support to parents and families, I think is really, really credible. There are lots of things within the report around children that I'm pleased about. There is another bit that does go into Councillor Turner's portfolio about the number of agencies spent continuing to fall. And I have to say, I think Children's Services is a big contributor to that. We had, when I first started doing Children's Services, 70 agency workers. I now think we have none.
Councillor Rob Walker.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, earlier for mentioning the fact that we've been successful in gaining over £200,000 from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Over the next 18 months or so, this will make a major difference in terms of the work looking at the future of our museums and how we can really transform them to provide a fantastic asset to our community. Mentors from the Heritage Lottery Fund are working with our officers, but a key thing is that we're setting up a local advisory group, so it's very much about working with people in the community to help shape our museums and galleries of the future. Also like to highlight some of the real successes of the last quarter. In terms of volunteers working with our officers, we now have the largest number in West Yorkshire who are playing a really tremendous role in making sure that our attractions are vibrant and welcoming to people. We've got over 560 different creative organisations and artists who are actually registered now with the authority, which shows the strength of our cultural sector. The Woven Festival in June was a massive success. This was despite the quite short leading to the event and the fact it was absolutely appalling weather. But the number of people participating and the feedback that we've had from this event has been tremendous and has led to us commissioning a further event in 2 years' time. I was at a meeting this morning where extensive work is already being planned. It's going to be linking in with the biennial event next year, but you're going to be seeing all sorts of different events happening right through that period, including a presence in the town centre. Also, something which will be close to the heart of Councillor Bolt, I'd like to welcome the opening of the mountain bike track at Oakwell Hall, which I think is already being well used. It was really good to go along and get involved in the official opening and witness parents and children together cycling on this track and making really good use of it. So I think we're really making some progress and making a difference for our residents in Kirklees.
Thank you, Councillor Cathy Scott.
I'd just like to welcome this report. I think in all areas we're actually improving, and I think the staff and officers should be commended for everything that they do. I'm just going to touch a bit on housing and the change in the housing allocation policy, particularly for care leavers. Councillor Kendrick was passionate about this, about us looking about developing their independence and helping these vulnerable young people to excel into their future living accommodation. So they are being given priority banding now, and they are being assisted so that they have the least kind of weight, but trying to help them to get into permanent household accommodation. So yeah, it's always going to be a challenge. These young people need our help and support, and I want to give a shout out to the mission that does some incredible work, and also Fusion Housing also does some incredible work out there for young people. I know we've got the poverty group that's still going, Poverty Action Group, but it's now known as the White Goods Group, so that we can support people that are becoming homeless or needing support out there. But I also want to commend the Council for its initial review of the care package about supporting people to be in accessible, warm and safe homes. It seems to be going from strength to strength, and it's nice to hear that, you know, people are being able to live independently within their own homes, and it helps them and it creates a healthier life. I'd also like to touch on what Councillor Kendrick did say when she was talking about the autism waiting list. That's welcome news for me. I'm still waiting on my grandchild being assessed, but just to hear the news that it's reduced, that's fantastic news. And I do believe a lot of parents out there today will be really, really pleased to hear that.
Thank you, Councillor Naheed Mother.
Thank you very much. I'd also welcome this report, and in particular would like to highlight or focus on pages 29 to 31, clean and green. And here you have an overview of the declared climate emergency. The outputs I'd like to read. So if you look at the bullet points, 60% of street lighting in Kirklees has been converted to environmentally friendly LED LEDs. We've started a 12.5 million four-year LED conversion programme for the remaining 31,000 lights in our district. Kirklees Council refers local businesses to the Leeds City region's resource efficiency fund. Over 170 Kirklees businesses have been engaged with, 76 have had free assessments, and almost 214,000 grants have been awarded. 609 tonnes of carbon dioxide savings have been made. In the last 6 years, over 1,000 council properties have had wall installation, and almost 2,000 have received loft installation. This saves 1,543 and 241 tonnes of carbon, respectively. If we move over to page 30, the council has reviewed its planning policies so that appropriate permission is granted on the condition that charging points for electric vehicles are provided in new residential and commercial developments. And finally, Kirklees Council has a target to reduce carbon emissions by 40% by 2020-2021. The council is now developing working on a report which will come forward to the council before the end of the year. In relation to the air quality action plan on page 31, it highlights that over the course of 2019 to 20, the council will invest in 27 electric vans, 20 full electric cars, and 50 hybrid to replace diesel vehicles. The council has commissioned the provision of 17 taxi charging points to be installed across Kirklees between September and December of this year, and it goes on. So very positive news. We're making progress in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, members. There was a lot to say on that corporate performance report, and it shows that you are all well on top of your brief. Anyway, without further ado, shall we note the report and on item 6? Councillor Lawson, do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. I note on page 30, point 3, paragraph 2, we have 10 air quality management areas. Why isn't Cleckheaton in there? It's on a major, probably one of the busiest interchanges in the country. It has very poor low quality air. It has a very high incidence of COPD. Why isn't it in that group of things there? When, under Council's own guidelines, I believe that the development in Hunsworth will actually push it into one of those areas anyway. So can we just have an answer on that, please, about why that is the case?
Now, do you know why it comes in your portfolio? The 10 air quality management areas, Cleckheaton, did you say? Cleckheaton is not in there? Chain Bar.
Chain Bar. I'm not 100% certain, but I can check and get back to you on that, Councillor Lawson. And it isn't. It is quite a flexible list. If we find that the air quality goes up and down and gets into those dangerous levels, we can include that. But I will get back to you once I've checked with the officers why it isn't in at the moment, unless Councillor McBride wants to add anything.
Councillor McBride?
So my colleague reminds me that, Viv's reminded me that this has been in and out by virtue of an action state. But Chamber, because it's part of the M62 and we all know the problems there, it's always going to be difficult, and because this is one of the most acute areas in terms of impacts of any part of Britain, never mind West Yorkshire. So I take your point. We need to constantly look at Chamber and the impact it's having on air pollution, and I will take that on board personally, because I think you're right. It's something we need to be looking at all the time.
When can we expect that to happen, please?
Sorry.
When?
I will take it with West Yorkshire and with our highways. Yeah.
Martin?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. One of the Cabinet members mentioned that buildings were going to be included with a charging point for electric vehicles. I think for clarity, they're going to be charging points for electric cars. I'm not aware that despite the growth of the e-bike sector, anyone is yet building in charging points for electric bikes, either in workplaces, leisure facilities, transport hubs, or residential developments. And these are a growing sector, so I've mentioned this at West Yorkshire, and it does need to be looked at. Reflecting on page 26, it talks about citizen engagement and that working with communities so they're actively involved. Could I ask when we're going to get the second stage of citizens engagement on the Cooper Bridge bypass? We had extensive involvement last year on 3 schemes, and we were told that there will be a formal feedback to allow people to see the results of that and the options going forward. Now, we've read in newspapers and I've seen things at West Yorkshire about changes, but those decisions and that citizen engagement hasn't come through this council and this cabinet. So if we could have some reflection on that. Page 29 talks about the clean and green agenda. The council will encourage more woodland and green infrastructure via the White Rose Forest Partnership. Again, reflecting on the consultation material which went for the Cooper Bridge bypass, that showed the destruction of huge swathes of ancient woodland on the Kirklees estate. There was nothing in that information or consultation, and nothing I've seen since, that showed any mitigation by replacing woodland, which according to the grave, which is said to be on the Kirklees estate, dates from the period of Robin Hood. You can't just plant saplings and hope that it will replace that. That should be mitigation which is going in from now. And reflecting on corporate performance, we saw yesterday in the media, particularly in the social media, but so far elected members haven't been told, that Kirklees Chief Executive is going to be seconded across to help reshape Welcome to Yorkshire. That clearly will have an impact on the corporate performance of the council. Members haven't been told about that, and I think we should have some statement about what the impact of losing our Chief Executive across to restructure Welcome to Yorkshire will be, and who's backfilling the position.
The 2 points I'll answer, and then I'll bring Councillor Walker and then Councillor Peter McBride in. The last point regarding the Chief Exec doing a small stint at Welcome to Yorkshire. She's been doing that for some time, actually. But the only thing that we've changed is for the very, very short term until we recruit a permanent chief executive. We need stability in that organisation, and we need somebody who's actually got some clout. So that's why Jackie is actually backfilling on a very, very temporary basis as the chief exec. And I'll make sure that that does come out. So the second point you mentioned was around electric charging for bikes. Point well made. Yeah, and yeah, we need to do more on that. In terms of the White Forest, the White Rose Forest, I'll ask Councillor Rob Walker, and then the other thing around Cooper Bridge, I'll ask Peter McBride. So Rob Walker, Councillor.
Yeah, thanks, Martin, for that question. My honest answer is I do not know how many trees are likely to be cut down and what direct replacement there will be for them. But, as you know, as a member of the Economy and Neighbourhoods panel, this is the policies are coming to the committee on Thursday. So I will ask our officers before that meeting if they could perhaps elucidate a little bit further around it. But obviously we are working towards a really ambitious programme of tree planting, which will look to replace any trees that are lost with projects like this. But hopefully we'll be able to give you more details on Thursday. Thank you.
Just I'll come back to Cooper Bridge. Just with regard to Becky Gedman's role, she's playing a role on behalf of West Yorkshire, as other chief execs do other issues. For example, the chief exec of Leeds is on behalf of all West Yorkshire authorities dealing with the total impact of Brexit, which is a massive thing. But nobody in Leeds is saying, oh, the chief exec of Leeds isn't operating. Of course he is. What they do, these chief execs do this additional to fulfilling their roles within the authority. Can you just remind me again the question of a Cooper Bridge, Martin? I'll try and help.
So, the issue about Cooper Bridge was there was an
yes,
extensive community involvement,
Martin,
and they were promised feedback which hadn't occurred.
Sorry. There was 3 weeks of detailed consultation with a lot of people in 5 points throughout. There was a report back to Cabinet, which unfortunately you weren't able to attend, which did give an account of this. If you want to recall, I can ensure that Keith Bloomfield, the officer concerned, will give you a personal report if that's your wish.
Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Shabir. We've heard a lot about the positives in this quarter report. I just want, obviously, if the council is going to continue to drive improvement, we need to focus on the things that are not going to go as well, are not going as well. So I'm referring to page 8 and page 17. And I wonder if the relevant cabinet member can give us an explanation as to why those receiving care and those giving care are finding it more difficult to access appropriate information, and also particularly the concern about caregivers finding it more difficult to access information about the choices that are available to them. That's page 8.
I couldn't really hear. I could hear, but I couldn't really hear, Andrew. I think it's the PA system.
Right, I'll repeat. So, we've heard a lot from Cabinet members about the positives in the report. If this council is going to continually drive improvement, we need to look at what the things are not going so well. So on page 8, there's concern that both those receiving care and those giving care are finding it more difficult to access information. And actually in the survey we've found that one of the results is the worst it's been in 5 years. So I wonder if the relevant cabinet member can give us an explanation as to why those receiving care are finding it more difficult to access information, and those giving care are finding it more difficult to access information about the choices that are available to them. Both of those figures have dropped in the since last year. Thank you.
Councillor Muscan, your portfolio.
Hi. I did respond to those in my initial statement, and one of the reasons, the first one, people with having access to information we're responding to, we're going to make sure every GP surgery has written information. The second one, we're still fully investigating why there's a slight drop in satisfaction for people receiving long-term care. But like I explained earlier, we depend a lot on our partners, particularly private providers of social care. And over this last year, we've had 3 providers very much at the last minute cease operations, and the council stepped in on an emergency basis to continue with that care and support. And people, we suspect that people confuse the council's role with private providers, and that's why it's only a very slight drop in satisfaction. However, we are, that's just us speculating as to why, so we need to dig deeper as to what's going on there and then tackle the issues.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Can we all agree to note that report? Thank you, members. Next item is item 9, proposed changes to impact assessment and integrated approach to expanded equalities, characteristics and environment. Any cabinet members want to make any comment on this before we move to the vote? Councillor Khan? Councillor Mather, I'm getting your name mixed up.
So we're on agenda item 9. I'm very heartened to see, following on from Councillor Bolt's interventions around climate emergency motion earlier in the year, that here we have a report which is asking to add 2 more characteristics to the already existing impact assessment, equality assessment, and those are low income and environmental impact assessment. I'm happy to support this report as it reflects our commitment to embed the characteristics and issues of low income and climate change into our working right across the organisation. So it's clear that we're committed, and we expect all the officers, when they're looking at policy, to ensure that that impact assessment is carried out accordingly. So I would ask my Cabinet colleagues to support this agenda item 9.
Thank you. Councillor Khan.
Thank you. Personally, I think this is one of the most radical and progressive reports that's come to Cabinet. Climate crisis and poverty are the 2 key issues in Kirklees, and inclusion of poverty and environmental impacts as well supports our agenda to tackle health inequalities, and for these reasons I fully support this report.
Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I would very much like to echo those sentiments. I think both of these things are absolutely critical because they're having a massive effect on our lives now, but the impact on our children, grandchildren's lives in the future is going to be absolutely immense. I think this links in with our focus within our economic strategy on the importance of developing an inclusive economy, which I think is the cornerstone of tackling poverty. Some really important work happening there, but we've got to make sure that this is a cross-cutting thing when we're looking at all the policies that we're introducing. And the same thing with climate change crisis. It's not something that we bolt onto our activities. It's got to be a thread running all through all the things that we do. Thank you.
Any more committee members? Yeah, just like to echo what everybody said. It's not just radical, it's actually transformational. Because we've been debating this in Cabinet for some time. And the equality impact assessment that we're actually going to approve today, it goes beyond compliance. And let me explain why. Low income, that will become a key feature in making sure that our policies are poverty-proofed. And working class family who actually are struggling, our aim is to actually make sure that the gap between the most well-off and the least well-off is actually reduced. It's also about inclusive growth agenda, which is actually a key theme of this council. One of the key features also, and I think Councillor Matchington mentioned this, unpaid carers. So it's not just about carers, it's actually unpaid carers. They are massively disadvantaged. And again, this will actually now embed in what we do in the council to actually make sure that we actually look at that as well. And the final thing what Councillor Mather mentioned is climate emergency. It's an emergency. We are taking that very, very seriously. So again, we would embed that in terms of our equality impact assessments. And Martin made a valid point that we should do that across the piece. This now will actually be council policy, part of our equality impact assessment. So we've actually formalised that by approving it at the Cabinet. So everybody now will actually have to look at that. So I welcome this report and I hope Cabinet can actually all support this. Thank you very much. Item 10, playable strategies. Councillor Walker.
Right. When this strategy first came to Cabinet, I felt that its focus was absolutely spot on. The focus is about giving our children the best possible start in life. And it was about acknowledging that we know that many of our children do not get an equal start in life. And as a result of this, in the longer term, it will affect everything, including their healthy life expectancy and their life expectancy. So if we look at what was at the core of the actions linked to this, it was about a major extra investment in active outdoor play. It promised to invest £9.5 million into this area, which is £5.5 million more than if we would just simply have replaced the existing play equipment. However, I do think that after listening to comments from people reflecting on some of the things that were in the original policy, we have made some minor revisions. But they're very important revisions, I guess, in terms of how this policy will play out. One of the things when I came to that meeting was to try and stress that anything that we did should be done with people. I remember the meeting very well. I think I was sitting next to Councillor Bolt. Councillor Lawson was sitting in front of me. Councillor Lawson asked the first question about to what degree we would continue with the consultation with people before things changed. I followed that up. I did refer to the earlier consultation process, which I thought was excellent. But I did make the point that I thought before anything further happened, we had to talk to councillors and we had to talk to communities. And in that, I would include both residents, but also important bodies within those communities, such as friends of groups where they exist, and also, crucially, people like the community hubs and some of their major members, such as heads of local schools. And I still think that's absolutely critical. So in terms of the changes that we've made, those are really bullet pointed on point 2 in section 2 of this report on page 42. So, where reference had been made about traditional equipped or manufactured play equipment being removed from certain playgrounds, I feel it was wrong in advance to make those decisions and indicate which playgrounds were going to use those things. I know from talking to residents, knocking on a lot of doors, talking to people on playgrounds, that they do value some of the traditional play equipment. But what we need to do is to discuss with them, as we look at each of the parks, what things would they like to keep, what do they really value, what kind of things would they like to see either coming in as replacements or, I would hope in a lot of cases, as additions to the equipment in those parks. Linked to that was what I felt was an unhelpful classification of parks into doorstep, community and destination parks. So that has been removed, along with the list, which I think had gone in there. It looked like a fait accompli that things were going to happen. I think it was more a reflection of some of the initial work that had been carried out by officers. So can I make it really clear, there has not been any predetermined decision about any of the parks within Kirklees, and there is no intention at all about closing any of those parks. So I think going forward, we've got the £9.5 million of extra investment, but, and this is really, really important, this is one of 3 strands of this approach. One is the actual physical structure of these parks. The second is the public health element of this, and public health colleagues are working really closely on this. They know that we've got a massive problem with obesity. It's getting worse. It will have an effect on children for the rest of their lives unless we can do something about it. They also know that there are other issues linked to this, things like mental health. We know that if people get out into the fresh air, into green spaces, they're much more likely to have a greater sense of well-being. And that isn't just children, that's parents as well. That's grandparents, that's carers who are with the children on the park. We know it affects mental health. Some of the most affecting conversations I had with some of my residents was mothers saying that for them it was really important to go with their children to their local park because it got them out of the house, got them into a different space, but also it's the social interaction with other people on the park, other parents, other adults who are there. It breaks down that sense of social isolation which can be so difficult for young parents and carers of children. The second aspect of this is working very closely with the community hubs. The community hubs are doing a lot of work around working to encourage children to become more active and more imaginative in the play. So just yesterday we had a meeting in my area with our community hub looking at how the sugar tax money that we've got coming in is going to be spent. The work that's going to happen with the new locality setups, a lot of that is going to be around not just mental health, but how that links with physical health and activities. So all these three areas, the team that's led by our Green Spaces grouping and specialist officers, they're going to be working with the school hubs, they're going to be working with our public health people to really try and reverse the trend to children staying inside, using electronic equipment, PlayStations and things like that, and encourage them to get out there into the fresh air, be active, be imaginative, and socialise with other people. So I really would like to commend this report as a very important and very positive policy strategy that will hopefully transform the lives of young people living in Kirklees.
Councillor Naheed Mother.
Thank you. I too want to welcome this report. I'm really excited to get on with the work. It closely mirrors the ambitious action plan we're trying to work towards on the climate emergency. The improvement to our play areas will strongly support this work. And it's a celebration and encouragement of people to be outdoors and active in our open and green spaces. We're also interested in introducing more natural-looking play, where we're not over-reliant on equipment. This isn't just rocks and logs, which has been wrongly reported, because it's a feature which is made from natural materials. It will be about intergenerational play. This is considered to be better for the environment and offers a broader range of age groups the opportunity to enjoy our play spaces, and has been demonstrated as good for our mental health and well-being. These changes will only be introduced where residents want them, as this is the first and foremost about our people, places and partnerships. Thank you.
I'll bring other members other than cabinet members to speak, because I think they indicate at the beginning. Councillor Munro.
I've just got a few questions. Firstly, in relation to this, is removing the list of play areas and maps will not allay residents' concerns that play areas are being closed. In fact, rather more, it suggests that the council is not being open and transparent. Can you please explain that?
Yeah, I think when those fears are being stoked by councillors in particular areas, I think that will be a real problem. I am making a very clear statement that no play areas are going to be closed. If that is contradicted, then it will create worries, I think, amongst people in particular areas. But I can only say what I believe is the intention, and what I will, I really will campaign against the closure of any parks. The only situation where that will be the case will be where there will be an overwhelming feeling from people in an area that there may be a small play area which would be better closed, so that we could concentrate resources in another play area that was close by. But that decision would not be made by councillors or council officers without reference to local people. But on the whole, this is all about protecting our play areas, and I cannot say that strongly enough.
Okay, so can you just tell me which play areas does the new strategy apply to? Because formally in the original policy, it only applied to specific play areas.
All of them.
Right, my next question. So what order will they be dealt with? How will they be considered? In what order will each one be considered?
Right, in terms of the consultation, the first stage of this is going to be with ward councillors. So it's up to ward councillors. I really think it's important that you have these discussions around these kind of things. Are there parks where you feel, perhaps due to the condition of the park, perhaps to do with the potential of the park? It could be. There are some parks in my wards which are very big spaces where only a small part of that space is being effectively used. And there might be all sorts of opportunities for doing things. I would hope that you would have also worked with local residents. You may have set up friends of groups. You may have existing friends of groups, so that these things would come forward. We do see this policy probably being rolled out over a slightly longer period of time. Initially, we were looking at a 3-year process. Discussions I've had with officers suggest that now, if we're going to put more work into consultation, that we need to look at this perhaps over a 5-year period with some reprofiling of activities. And remember as well, it is not just this 9.5 million going in. There's all sorts of opportunities for bringing other funding in, particularly to set up play schemes, activities, events and things like that, which will encourage more young people to go out and use those parks. If your ward's anything like mine, there are certain families, certain children who do engage with the parks a lot, others where it's less so the case. So we need to work with schools and other community groups to try and identify those children and look at ways we can get them out there and using the parks. But I don't know the answer to that. That's the kind of thing you can help with.
Well, I mean, I think you're putting the onus upon the councillors to do a lot of work here. I'm not sure we'll all be able to do that. But in any event, what my concern here is that basically what you're saying is that if local residents don't shout out enough about their local play area, they're going to lose it. Is that?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I think one of your key roles, you are a representative of your community just as I am. And I think as a councillor, it's really important that we do work with our communities, particularly in the communities where you know they're less likely to get themselves organised into friends groups and things like that. That's where, working with officers, we need to identify where there may be parks where it's really important that they are seen as a high priority for development. And we're looking to put a lot of resources in there. As I said earlier, I'm very concerned about the children's inequality. And I would like to hope that we start to reverse some of that by this expenditure and other work that we're doing within Kirklees.
Well, thank you for that. But there's another concern here, in that a lot of these play areas are relatively small.
Can I bring some other councillors and I'll come back to you?
Right,
I just want to make sure every single councillor. Councillor Bolt.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I thought she had some more questions, but it seems to interrupt her. Yeah. A couple of interesting points on this, which I'm sure Cabinet will be aware of, that the changes in the regime has prompted quite a lot of dialogue between some Murfield residents where a park was allegedly improved, but it's actually deterred people from using it, because when Kirklees worked on this park, they removed the barrier fence around the young people's play area. Parents had an understandable fear that animals would be getting in and fouling the area. So whilst the report talks about barriers to play, having secure fencing to stop animals getting into that is a barrier to play, because people don't feel confident in using it. And I would ask if that's value for money, that taking a fence away then deters people from using it, because obviously what we're seeing is there are references in the report on page 49 and elsewhere to wanting to encourage use and make sure that people don't see those barriers. In fact, on page 47, the vision and aims say our vision is a district where all are able and encouraged to access a range of opportunities. Well, in Murfield, you've discouraged people because, as you know, Chair, from having direct contact with residents, and I believe you had a 15-minute heated conversation with one of my residents, she will not take her family to this park because the considerable expenditure and refurbishment is potentially being wasted by not having a fence to keep stray dogs and other wild animals out. So can we have that fence back so that people in the Stocksbank area can use it? I was also interested, Robin, your reference about the clarification and removing distinctions. It's on page 42, paragraph 2, bullet point 2. References which distinguish between traditional equipped and natural have been removed to provide flexibility. Does that also mean in removing those distinctions, the distinctions and decisions which affected the maintenance of those parks will now be reversed? So we won't see parks such as Knoll Park in Murfield being left to grow wild in many areas because it was deemed a natural play area. If those distinctions are being removed, then we should go back to the situation as it was.
The first point about Rocket Park and the removal of the fence, I think that decision around that was taken before this policy came in. And I think one of the problems any changes to play areas, people don't like change often and do worry about things. I have discussed it at some length with officers. Their view is that the key thing is the security of the park and the safety in terms of a barrier between the road and the play area. Their argument is that there is still a substantial wall, there's a gate, and I think a new kind of chicane structure's being put in place. So it would be less likely for a child to stray onto the road. Other things in terms of fencing which might be there to deter animals, I think, it would need looking at a little bit more closely. So all I can say really on that one is that in that particular case, I will again return to speak to the officers. I must admit I haven't actually visited the park myself, but I promise that I will do that over the next week or so to have a look at it, just think see what I think myself. But I think in terms of other changes going forward, because working with people in local communities is so important, I think that if something like this were to come up, we should definitely discuss it with people before a decision and changes were made. It can be really difficult because I know in the past when we've planted things like trees around the perimeter of playing fields, some parents have really welcomed those for environmental reasons and for their play benefit. Others become very anxious about it because they see them as potential cover for people who are adults who are up to no good on the edge of parks. So there has to be some very sensitive conversations, really, I think, at times. Just remind me of your second question about the play. Have I covered it?
You've probably answered most of them. One of them was a question about value for money. Well, if you're visiting the site, you'll be able to assess whether the cost saving on removing a fence is value for money.
Of course, yeah.
But because the thing there, as you say, as you'll see it's not just the parents they're concerned about child safety against the roads, but the principal issue, which has been highlighted in Rocket Park at Murfield, is their fear of the area being fouled by dogs and other wild animals, which those low fences tended to dissuade. And that's what's keeping the parents who are writing to myself and the leader and yourself about that, why they're saying they're not letting their children play, is because they don't want to run the risk of their children stepping, eating,
Martin,
or picking up anything.
That particular one, we are looking at that.
Yeah.
That's the individual case, and I've personally been involved in that, and that is, we are looking at that.
Yeah. I will take another look at that personally as well. Yeah.
Councillor Lawson?
Thank you, Chair. In Councillor Walker's introduction, he touched on a lot of things that we all know as council that need to happen. I agree with 99% of what you said, and this is all valuable stuff. We know that this stuff needs to happen for the sake of our future generations. A couple of questions, though. One is that at the moment, with the old plan being ditched and a new plan in transition, as it were, there is a sense certainly amongst residents that I've come across, and those would be in Cleckheaton, that there are some spaces that are in a state of limbo in terms of investment. Now, when I look at something like this, I often ask, well, what's not been invested over the past how many years is the old plan running for? 2-3 years? So how many money has not been invested? How much money has been withheld in that investment in keeping our parks up to snuff? I would say that there's a particular park where we are, which is Moor End Park, that has got very, very tatty, and people still don't know the fate of that park. It's in limbo. So there's that sense of limbo, and I wondered whether you want to comment on that and the state of the investment in just maintaining parks at a reasonable standard and a safe standard.
Yeah, there's no plan to stop the regular maintenance spending on parks. And where there are parks where there's a really good argument to undertake work, whenever it will be most appropriate, that will go ahead. So we're not saying nothing's going to happen over the next 6 months while we talk to people. We will address, if there are particular problems, bring those things forward with officers. And they carry out park inspections anyway, so if you've got equipment that's broken, that's dangerous, that's just tatty, they will actually, as per normal, be looking to replace or refurbish that equipment. So we're not saying nothing's going to happen for 6 months or so.
Okay, so that sense of everything being on hold and that sense of limbo, that should not be the case going forward. Is that right? We should be getting clear action and clear answers.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other councillors want to speak who haven't spoken, except for cabinet members? I've got all the cabinet members in sight. So, Councillor Simpson, do you want to say anything?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah. I'd like to welcome the report, Rob, and thank you for all of the effort that you've put in, particularly since you took over the portfolio lead. I think you've done a great job, so thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the officers who've been involved as well. This played quite a role in the last election, the player strategy, and I think it was used quite deliberately. So I hope people will now recognise that, we could have just spent £4 million to replace all of the existing equipment, but we're not going to do that. It's £9.5 million investment to make things better, and that nothing's going to change without a meaningful consultation with residents and community groups. I hope that opposition parties will recognise that and use that going forward.
Yes, I very much welcome those comments, and I genuinely would like to work with people from other political groups. So if anyone outside this meeting have got further points that you want to raise, things you want to have a chat with me about, my door is open. I will meet people at any point to discuss with them things that will help us to improve the quality of the play areas for our children in Kirklees. Because fundamentally, I believe you want the same as me. We want better facilities for our kids. So when we get the opportunity, let's work together to achieve those.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Munro?
I just wanted to follow on from my last few questions. I started asking one about some play areas, as you know, are quite relatively small compared to others. So when you were talking about how you're going to invest in them and put additional things in, well, how is that going to work out when there's probably not much room to do much more in some of the existing play areas?
Well, in those cases, if there isn't the room to do it, then we wouldn't. We probably would replace existing equipment if that is viewed by local residents as being a sensible thing. But old Yorkshire statement saying you can't fit a quart into a pint pot. We're not going to be able to put a lot of extra equipment into some of these very small play areas.
Okay, it's just you were talking about how you're going to invest in all the play areas. But my last question is, so when will the funding be committed to each play area?
That funding is committed. There isn't a complete moratorium in when we actually do things. As soon as we've got good ideas coming forward, especially I think after we've met with councillors, we can begin to spend and invest in these things.
Sorry, can I just ask one more question? Well, obviously, you're now dealing with all the play areas across the whole of Kirklees, so it's going to take a lot longer if you're doing them on a play area by play area basis. So, will you? So, my question really is: surely you can't commit that fund, start spending the money on those play areas until you know what every single play area needs with it across Kirklees. So that's going to take an awful long time to do.
Yeah, but I think, again, it's really important that we work together on this as councillors, with officers and with our communities, to begin to identify areas that we see as real priorities. Otherwise, it would take a heck of a lot of time to do a detailed survey of every single park. And remember, we have got more parks, substantially more parks than Leeds, than Bradford. We've got the most play areas in the whole of West Yorkshire. So we don't want to do that, because otherwise we would end up with a really long period where nothing happens. We don't want that. And remember as well, this is a long-term process. I hope that after this money has been spent, we would be committing further resources going forward. And remember, it's not just this £9.5 million, it's all the other funding that's going in to work with parents and children to encourage them to get outside of play.
Councillor Walker, I've got cabinet members in. I've got Cathy Scott first.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Can I just welcome this strategy, Rob? You've worked really hard on this, incredibly hard, and with officers. And I just think this reaffirms the council's commitment to its citizens. I think quite a lot of this is getting lost in spin and being wrongly put out there. I mean, some of the words today, yet again, doom, gloom. No, this is 9.5 million investment. How many other councils out there are actually making that statement? So I think, going back to some of the things that we're saying, we are community leaders, we are councillors, we are leaders, and it's up to us to work with the people in our community. So it's about the people and the places, giving them a voice to shape it and be part of what happens within their community. That ties into place-based working, strategies, and also the localities working. And it's about play areas. They are the cornerstone of our communities. And it's about bringing people together. They need to be safe environments, and you're absolutely right. However long it takes, I'm happy with that role, as long as I know my child's safe or my family's safe in an area where they're going. And it's about bringing areas back into use that are being neglected. Some of the equipment just needs refurbishing, so it might just be that the case. But I think that we're missing the point as well. A lot is lost in the digital era, where social media, people are trapped in spaces where they should be able to go outside and enjoy their environment. So yet again, I welcome the news. It's 9.5 million investment. You've actually committed that today. It's been there all the time. It's not going to be divided in portion size to every community. It's about the need. And I'm sure officers know which is the high priority areas that really do require it. And it's essential that people out there today, listen, it's your voice, you're deciding to be part of this improvement, and we need you to be part of this engagement and consultation, as you did say. So it's about putting the right message out there. It's an investment, it's not taken away, and we've got to stop this, because Councillor Simpson did point out in the local elections in my ward, it was used as a vehicle of taking equipment away, and it wasn't took away. It's still there. I hope that council retracts that statement at the next full council.
Thank you, Councillor Cathy Spot. A very passionate contribution. Councillor Muscan.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the conversation today, you wouldn't think that we were investing 9.5 million in it at all. So instead of it being received as a good thing, and we are committed to improving provision across Kirklees, we've got the opposition kind of nitpicking about why you invested in our play areas for. So I really don't understand half this conversation. Obviously, we can't give details about every single play area in detail what's going to happen to it. It depends on what residents want. It depends on what other facilities are available. It depends on a whole load of other things. What local people, they may prefer a whole new set of equipment. I mean, we want to encourage children and adults to use play areas. We need people to be more active. We've got huge problems in terms of health outcomes. 1 in 3 adults is either overweight or obese, and 1 in 3 primary school children are overweight and obese. This is in our best interest to invest this money. And the best way to affect public health is through providing the opportunities within the environment where people are more active, access the outdoors, and Rob linked it to mental health as well. So it's absolutely in our best interest, this investment, and it's about time that, I hope the public can see that this is a positive move from our leadership.
Thank you, Councillor Khan, for that contribution. Councillor Viv Kendrick.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think it's any secret that play areas are really relevant to the development of children and young people. And in Kirklees, there's already been said we've 314 of those, and we should be absolutely proud of them. However, there is a level of inequality of access for some children and young people in some areas. And I think if we get this investment right, we can address those issues effectively. I'll be parochial and say in my ward we have huge ambitions for our play areas. We have a continuing dialogue with residents, and I think it's my duty, my responsibility as a councillor to do that, but also my delight to make sure we get the best things for our residents. I will make a comment about fenced-in play areas, just to throw into the pot for Councillor Walker to consider. About 3 or 4 years ago, I attended the opening of a play area in Dewsbury Park, which was fenced in, and it was also labelled, and the other reason for the fencing, as a smoke-free zone within that area. So besides keeping animals out, it's a really relevant thing to consider whether we should say to adults, you mustn't be smoking in this area, particularly where small children are playing. But, this investment of 9.5 million is really invaluable to us. And I think investing in our places and our play areas, we are investing in our children and young people for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Viv Kendrick, for that contribution. Councillor Carol Patterson.
Thank you. I mean, everyone said almost everything I would want to say, but what I will add is that healthy children are not just healthy, but they learn better when they're healthy children. And also, I'm really pleased to see that there's still the commitment to providing safe places for children to play. I will just add as well, one other comment on fencing, but the 2 play areas in Greenhead Park, one of our best parks, are not fenced. And nobody has ever suggested that smoke-horn dogs cross the line. But that is obviously a debate in individual parks. But I'm really pleased to support this report.
Thank you. Any more? Councillor Peter McBride? No? Nahid? No. Okay. firstly, right, yeah, a few key messages, right? Yeah, this is £9.5 million investment. It always was. It was nothing but that. And on reflection, I think, hopefully today the record is going to be set straight, that we are committed to our play areas, we are committed to our younger people, and not just that, but we are committed to our communities. This will be a bottom-up approach. We've set the vision, we've set the ambition. Now, Councillor Walker has given a commitment, as has this cabinet, that we will talk to every single community group. I know in my ward, there's some players that the community wants shutting down. So until you actually get that local intelligence, and part of that local intelligence gathering is to talk to ward members. Now, ward members can engage, and we welcome that. If they don't want to engage, not a problem. But we will make sure we will get this right, because we have to get this right. It's an investment that's really needed. And we want to make sure that, hopefully from today, we've turned a new page, and I'm sure Tony's made all the notes that, we are fully committed in actually improving all our play areas, and the community and the residents will be fully engaged in the whole process. So once again, Councillor Walker, thank you very much for actually making the time and the effort to actually review the whole approach, and hopefully the message is out there. So are we all agreeing to move this report? Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 11, Highway Design Supplementary Planning Document. Councillor Peter Bride.
Thank you, Chair. This supplementary planning document is an addendum to the local plan. It sets a standard for highway provision. It encourages good design in planning routes, spaces and urban landscapes to ensure streets and spaces are safe, accessible and pleasant to use. It'll be used as a yardstick for approval for all planning applications of any significant size. It's particularly pertinent as we proceed to the first steps in implementing the blueprint for Huddersfield, which is a later item on the agenda, and certainly this standard will be used to and applied in these circumstances. I move it, Chair.
I'd like to second this agenda item. It's an excellent document guide. It's user-friendly, it's detailed, it's clear and has succinct messages. It sits alongside all of the other planning decisions we will make, and I think it will ensure that the highway quality delivers quality design within any development proposals. So I second this.
I'll bring other cabinet members in. I've got Councillor Lawson who wanted to speak on this, and Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Chair. When we started to initiate the supplementary planning documents some months ago, I absolutely thought that was the best idea forward. Of going forward. It gives us control over, and I'm talking as a member of a planning committee, of the Heavy Woolen Planning Committee here, it gives us more control over how we design. It doesn't exclude planning, but it facilitates planning in the way that we want it to happen, and it's from that standpoint that I make my comments. I would like to know a couple of little points though. Just from each of the sections that I've picked up. So one of them is about prioritising pedestrians. If somebody wants to take notes, and I'll just kind of give these as comments going through. Is that okay? Is that all right? Okay, so I'm coming to my questions now. The rest was kind of just blurb, really. I'll be honest. Okay, so here's the important bit. If you want to just jot them down, thanks. So. From prioritising pedestrians, I noticed that we give consideration for partially sighted and those with sight conditions, and that's absolutely bang on. We should be doing that. I didn't see anything about consideration for dementia sufferers in there. It may have been in the background, but it would be nice to see it in this part of the report. The other thing that I didn't see in there was a consideration for especially children's and wheelchair users' heights as far as visibility from the highways and from the footpaths go. We're talking later on about shrubberies being 60 centimetres from the ground and maintained at that position if they're next to the road. If the levels are slightly different, that can have a huge impact on particularly those people who are height restricted in terms of wheelchairs or just being small. The other thing that I'd probably touch on is the item on trees. I would have liked to have seen where mature trees are removed. Sometimes that's unavoidable. It's regrettable, but it's unavoidable. What I would like to see, though, is instead of them just being replaced, I would like to see some kind of idea of multiples of them being replaced. So can we replace them with 5 trees that are native species? That kind of consideration. Can we maximise the benefit of the replacement of that tree is where I'm going with that. We talk about on-street parking and the development of on-street parking in new developments. I would have liked to have seen something specific said about on-street parking, electric car charging. So either from lampposts or from a series of bays that can be managed in that way. Lastly, you'll be glad to hear, lastly is about litter bins, and recycling bins isn't mentioned at all in this, especially in the town centre, which would have been nice to see. Because I think the danger is, I'm sure you'll agree, the danger is that if we produce something like this and it's got holes in it, it becomes the lowest arguable minimum. And it becomes something that can be used against us by developers rather than something that strengthens our hand. Sorry, that took a while, but thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. I'm sure this meeting is recorded. Andrea, can we ensure that what John has said is transferred to the planning department and that we take note of the points? Not guaranteeing literally everything will be included, but certainly you made some absolutely pertinent points, and they should be duly and properly considered. And I will try and ensure that if they're not already in there in one form or another, that they will be.
So just to come back, Chair, I understand that this is multidisciplinary, different responsibilities from different departments. That's fine, I do understand that. Just those details do need to be addressed, but very gratifying that those are going to be included in some form or another. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think your points are well made, John, and we will take them on board, and that's why Peter asked for a transcript of all the thing you mentioned, and we will look at incorporating all that because it's common sense stuff. Councillor Bolt.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and welcome this, as the report says. It gives some clarity, particularly for internal consultees. If Cabinet would look at page 68, the highway design principles, the overarching elements of this. There are a couple of things there which I think need stating and some reflection, and picking up on what Rob said on a previous item that he was happy to go out and look at things. I hope other Cabinet members will at last take up an invitation which I've been requesting for probably some 4 years now about a safety issue in Berry Brow. Principle number 1 talks about putting pedestrians and cyclists first by designing routes that minimise barriers and ensuring their safety. If any Cabinet member or one of the officers would like to accompany me on a cycle ride from Honley back to Huddersfield coming through Berry Brow, as you join into Berry Brow, there are some central reservations which force the traffic on the left-hand bend towards the cyclists. I asked officers some years ago to look at putting road safety information signs to alert people about the fact that cyclists, according to the bikeability, the national standards for cycle safety, are encouraged to ride away from the pavement. That's never happened. I did ask, I think I asked your predecessor and asked previous Cabinet members to come out and have a look at that for themselves. And I think that needs to be done on one of the major routes. Perhaps Cabinet, although not a design principle, perhaps Cabinet could look at emulating what other local authorities are doing, and that is designate either one of the Cabinet members or somebody else as an active travel champion. We used to have them under Cycling England, and many authorities are now reintroducing these. Obviously, the more prominent ones, the likes of Chris Boardman for Andy Burnham, Dame Sarah Story for Dan Jarvis, but also our local neighbours of Calderdale and Bradford have appointed active travel champions from among the members to look at issues like this and take things forward. And I would encourage you to look at that. The surfacing standards that are mentioned, and we talk about that on the principles on sustainability, but also on page 98, we're talking surfacing standards. And strangely enough, one of them that it talks about is use of cobbles. Break up tarmac highways with other materials, e.g. occasional strips of granite or stone cobbles. That seems to directly conflict with priority number 1 of ensuring that cyclists are safe. Whilst in the Low Countries, the Paris-Roubaix and other major international cycle events, the cobbles are seen as a challenge to the professionals. They're seen as an obstacle to many commuters and nervous bike users. And I would ask you to look at that as a safety implication, particularly as we now go towards autumn and winter, when they may be covered in leaves, algae and moss. They're not a safe cycle or indeed a pedestrian surface. On page 100, we talk about the utilities. And sadly, I can give Cabinet a current example of where Kirklees, in licensing utilities work on the highway, is adversely affecting its users. In preparation for the enterprise zone, Murfield 25, obviously fresh utilities need to be put in. 2 weeks ago, a company came along, dug the highway up, the grass vergers and others, and put in a gas main. They were doing a good job of reinstating it by putting tarmac down and reseeding the vergers. And I asked them if they could protect the verge so that people didn't drive over them. And they said, we can, but you'll probably find it's going to be a waste of time, because if you look just down the road, you'll see somebody coming the other way with a digger. They were putting in the electric wire. So I went to have a word with this person and said, for goodness sake, why aren't you all working?
Can you...
Yeah, it's a question about utilities.
Yeah, okay.
Setting the context if we can, Chairman.
Even me, I'm trying to listen very carefully and I'm losing track. But can you...
Well, if you do listen carefully, you won't lose track. So they were in another utility. I asked the digger why he was digging up what somebody had only just put down and had gone off. He said, have a word with Kirklees because they license the utilities in the highway. There are 4 different utility firms going to dig up the same stretch of highway. How is that common sense? No. It's you've got a very detailed thing. I mean, I know I've seen that. Unfortunately, unlike many of the cabinet members, I haven't had a chance to type out my script, so I'm having to work it out. Did you? Yeah. With a hand? I said most. Not all, Kathy. Thank you. Yeah, I've started, so I'll finish. The page 112, the Kirklees local plan, refers to policy LP22 about parking criteria. Could I ask if this parking criteria is to be enforced for the life of the property? Again, we've seen situations where car park on a drive or in a garage adjoining a property is classed for planning as a parking space. Before the development is finished, the local planning authority are granting people permission to turn that parking space into a habitable space. So therefore, the cars are being forced onto the road. The estate roads are not then fit for purpose and standard. I would question in page 173 a comment by Jones Homes. I mean, obviously, developers seek to maximise the space that they use. But Jones Homes' comment on this is that 1 metre is sufficient width for cycle infrastructure. Well, if the MD of Jones Homes or any planning officer approving that wants to come out for a ride and try and find traffic passing within 1 metre, they'd be welcome to come and do so. I take issue on page 186 with the Kirk Burton comment about shared spaces. If anybody's interested in what a shared space actually does and looks like, they should go have a look at Poynton in Cheshire. There are some excellent user statistics there, and a colleague of mine was able to walk down the middle of the street and speak to road users about their impression, because everybody was operating. The appendices list the comments, and I would just say, Chair, that the response from the authors of the report to comments placed are at best perfunctory, because from page 189 for the subsequent 9 pages, The comments of Murfield Town Council are listed. Some very detailed comments going to the nub of what this is and asking questions. Do the high standards conform to design manual for streets? Were all highway design considerations taken into account? The response from officers is akin to that shortest sentence in the Bible, contents noted. As I say, that is a perfunctory response to a detailed submission from a consultee, and I would hope that you would instruct officers to give better responses.
I'm still awake. Thank you, Martin. Your points will be noted, and I will be referred to. It will be referred to planning and to highways. I mean, you've got the great ability to talk yourself out of good points, haven't you, Warren? Because by the time you finished it, we were almost all asleep. However, you did make some valid points about the difficulties of ensuring there is a compromise and a compatibility between the use of the road and pavement between different users of different modes of transport. They've got to be addressed in different ways in different places. So some of your points, I'm sure, Martin, are quite valid, and officers will take them up. And if there is a need for modification, without necessarily going to see all the various points that you invite us to see, nonetheless, we will still take your points seriously.
Thank you, members. Can we agree to move on and vote for that, yeah? Okay. Item 12, Kirklees permit scheme to manage street works. Is that you, Rob?
Yeah. Part of this flows on from some of the comments made by Councillor Bull, which I will have to ask him about later about the roadworks at Murfield. But
I'll show you when you come to Rocket Park, Rob.
yeah. So this is about the Kirklees permit schemes for managing street works. As you may or may not be aware, these were first introduced in 2012, but only for the 20% of busiest roads within Kirklees. The government now expects all councils to extend this scheme and for it to be extended by April 1st of next year. And what will happen as a result of this is that all adopted roads will now have a permit scheme, which will mean that if the utilities or Kirklees highway staff are going to work on a section of road, they have to receive a permit from our highways department. There is also a commitment on our highways department to adopt a common piece of software which is called Street Manager to manage the work that's happening. And I've been down to highways to look at this because they're beginning to implement this already. And it does give you a very real-time, very detailed and real-time overview of what's happening in terms of roadworks. It's interesting that the kind of situation that Councillor Bolt was reporting, that shouldn't really happen if this is being implemented. So he's gone, but I will promise him that I will follow that up. There are, in a typical year in Kirklees, 12,000 instances of street work taking place. It's actually estimated with this new scheme that it will bring economic benefit. It's estimated for each extra £1 that we'll have to spend in implementing this, we will bring £14 of benefit to the local economy through the reduction of traffic problems as a result of roadworks. So it should be a benefit, and unusually I would commend an act that's been passed by our government.
Have I got anybody to second that? Peter? John?
Thank you, Chair. Brief question. Does this cover telecoms and electrical engineering? I'm thinking specifically things like works by TalkTalk and Virgin with fibre. I ask specifically about things like digging up of pavements and the kind of the inadequate replacement of those pavements, and the installation of comms boxes, those grey monstrosities that my residents have certainly complained about being just slung up against their own properties and the walls of their properties without any permission at all, other than the blanket one they get by primary legislation.
Basic answer to that is yes, but I do share your concerns because in my ward, like yours, there is a lot of this work taking place at the moment. And in some cases, they are putting boxes and things in places which are deemed by residents to be unsuitable. So, for example, one of the ward councillors in Greenhead reported such an instance to me last week, and our highways people did work on it and did actually manage to solve the situation. So if you have problems like that coming forward, do report them through as quickly as possible and we may be able to do something about it. And I do think it needs policing very carefully because certainly in my ward at the moment there's utter chaos both on the roads and pavements. It's worrying that you've got two different providers putting in fibre, both operating in a similar area at the same time. Yeah, I think we need to look at this.
Thank you. Are we all okay to approve that report? Thank you, members. Item 13, New Street and Clothall Street, public
Chair.
realm.
Thank you, Chair. This is the first instalment in a series of instalments to implement the Huddersfield Blueprint. This is 5.25 million that we're going to invest in improving the streetscape in New Street and Clothall Street. It includes measures for greening, improving the pedestrian landscape, ensuring the main routeway is safe, it provides a safe environment. It'll include major improvements to street furniture, examples of which are shown in the appendices. There'll be further consultation about the detail. It will be implemented in two stages, this year and next year. It's immediate evidence that the Huddersfield Blueprint is being delivered. We intend to reopen the shop that was showing the Huddersfield Blueprint to give people the opportunity to comment on what we intend for this main thoroughfare. In the next few years, there'll be a gradual transformation of Huddersfield in its main thoroughfares, in the main spatial features of the town. In street design, we're trying to plan as green and pleasant an environment as we can, which is safe, dementia-friendly, conscious of special needs of our residents, including the blind, the infirm, small children. We aim for our open spaces to be open and accessible for pop-up events, which will allow for extended markets, food and drink fairs, and one-off events. The aim is to bring back vibrancy to our town, which will encourage footfall and improve trade. We will take this approach to Huddersfield and in turn to Dewsbury and indeed to all of our towns and townships throughout Kirklees. This is the starting point of major investment and regeneration, not merely in Huddersfield, but also throughout Kirklees.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Naheed, do that.
Councillor McBride said majority of what I wanted to say. This is Kirklees putting its money where its mouth is. It's investing heavily. It's also following on from the blueprint and walking us through what's really useful in this report is it actually walks you through the types of improvements we're looking at, and the 3D dimensions are really, really good. And I think that our residents, our visitors will really be pleased with how the future of the blueprint is being delivered. So I would like to support this agenda item 13 for approval.
Thank you, members. Are we okay to agree that? Thank you. Item 14, Council Budget Strategy 2020-23. Peter, Councillor McBride.
Thank you, Chair. And the Cabinet must provide a draft of its strategy which will inform the coming year's budget in October. This is provided in the details of this report, but to cut a long story short, we have been planning cuts for a decade, which has led to a net loss in this council of over 150 million annually. Prior to the government's spending announcement, we had planned to meet a £14 million further deficit and cut. This year, as a one-off, we've had an allocation which allows the deficit to fall to 3.5 million in this given year. We can make no presumption or plans for future years, and we may have to batten down hatches over Brexit. So for future years, we are, well, not very clear. On the capital side, we have, as a policy, decided to invest in our future by significant prudent borrowing over the next 4 years. This additional investment will fund regeneration of our 2 main towns and onwards to our towns and townships. This is a massive regeneration programme whose visual impact will be very evident in the next 4 years. It's the source of funding referred to early reinvestment in New Street, and it will be further reflected by investment in Dewsbury. There are no details here, but there is sufficient plan for a proportionate uplift for all our townships, as well as the 2 major towns.
Thank you, Peter. Highlights, it's a one-year budget only. Next year, depending on what happens nationally, we could actually be back in the same situation that we have been in the previous years. So we need to exercise caution. Secondly, adult social care is still a massive crisis. Children's services, massive crisis in terms of funding. What the government has also assumed that the 2% precept for adult social care will be taken up by all councillors. So when they say that they put all this money in, they've actually taken into account local taxation, because a lot of it is going to be generated locally. So welcome the report. The strategy is going to go to next full council meeting, but we have to approach this with caution. Are we okay to approve that, ready to go to full council? Thank you, members, and thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.